Indigenous people, I mean, we had, unfortunately, we lost who we were.
Right, a lot of it was lost. Yeah.
But I think everybody's lost who we are. There's big stuff coming for humanity. They were terrified of us because of what we can do, because now what we could do can affect them where they live. That when we do step out into this next realm in the next 7 generations, because I'm telling you, in the next 7 generations, we will be there. We will be going to other worlds.
When you look at space and you look at the Earth, there are no lines.
No, there
are
isn't.
no lines of nation. They are imaginary lines that man has put together to separate ourselves.
If you're not sure if psychic ability is real, learn to become more psychic. Everybody, it's in us. It's innate within us. It's a natural part of progression in human evolution. Not even human evolution. It's within all of the animal nation and plant nation within the world.
I'd like to welcome to the show Shawn Leonard. How you doing, Shawn?
I'm pretty good. How about you, Alex?
I'm good, my friend. Thank you so much for coming down to Next Level Soul Studios, man. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm all the way from Nova Scotia, Canada.
The Great White North.
The Great White North. Actually, it's kind of brown right now. We did have snow over Christmas, but it melted away, thankfully, so I'm happy about
Well, I
that.
appreciate you coming on. We have our friend Sarah Landon connected us, and she's like, you have to talk to Shawn. And he has a very unique story, and he has a unique perspective on the work, the spiritual work that we do, because you are an Indigenous psychic medium.
Yeah.
Which I've never met an Indigenous psychic medium. Maybe in my Latino roots, maybe I've met, but never in the North American.
North American sense of Indigenous
North American
people, yeah.
Indigenous. So, before we get started, we'll talk about your book, Spirit Talker, and everything that you're doing, but. Were you always like this, or was there a time in your life that these abilities were not shown to you, meaning that you lived a quote-unquote normal life before the insanity?
Right. That's a tough question to answer, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because I think, most of us probably have experiences all of our lifetimes. But there comes a point where you start to embrace things, or things shift or change within you that you have to see. I see the world differently. And growing up very young, I had many experiences that I thought were just normal, but maybe not so normal to everyone else. And my mom made me feel it was normal. So Mom said it's normal, it's all good. And, I remember at a very young age having my great-grandparents would visit me.
Oh.
And they would, after they passed away, I was very close to my great-grandparents. And I remember waking up very early in the morning and looking in my room and seeing them standing there. And it would be not like I could see them like full body. It was like silhouettes of people, but I knew that it was my great-grandparents. And it kind of startled me a little bit.
As it would.
It would. I mean, you're just a little boy, like, 4 or 5 years old, seeing, shadow people in your room who sound like your great-grandparents. But they felt...
And did you hear it, or did you hear it in the mind?
I could hear them with my ears. I could actually hear them having, like, it was almost whispers. They were whispering to each other. Although to themselves, maybe they're talking in their full voice, but to me, it sounded like whispers. And I told my mom, and my mom says, well, they just love you, they're just visiting you. And, that's pretty normal to have your ancestors, the people that you love, to spend time with you. And I thought, okay. So it would keep happening. And I actually then at some point realized if I turned the night lights on in my room, that I didn't see them as much. So I had all these night lights, and then for whatever reason, my mom needed to save on electricity, would come in and turn the night lights off. Like, how much electricity is a night light using, right?
Saving nickels a day, sir.
Probably like half a penny back then. But anyway, one night I woke up and I noticed that the lights were turned off, and I saw my great-grandparents there, and I pretended I was still sleeping. And I was still a little startled because I could hear them whispering to each other. Although I didn't cover up my head with the blankets, I just covered my eyes and pretended that I couldn't see them, right? And at one point, my great-grandmother ran her fingers through my hair.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, so she actually, and it was really not like startling in any way. It was almost like a term of endearment of sorts. Yeah, comforting, like very loving, right? And I didn't know she could touch me. So I flipped the covers off me. I did a backflip off my bed. I don't even think my feet touched the floor. I was out the door. I was in my mom's room. And I said, listen, Mom, I know that they love me, but this is really scaring
me out, man.
She just touched my hair. And she brought me into the room, and we had a conversation with my great-grandparents.
And did she see them as well?
She did not.
But they were still waiting for you when you got back?
No, they weren't.
Oh, okay.
So, but I went back in, and she made me talk to the air.
Sure.
And because I couldn't see them because the lights were on at that point. But I just started saying, Nan, Pop, I love you. But, this makes me very uncomfortable. But could you please not visit me like this anymore? I appreciate, if you're going to visit me, just make sure I'm asleep. And that was it.
And they never came again?
I never saw them again.
Oh.
I have, that's not 100% the truth. Because much later in life, and I still feel them around, I just don't see them the way I did. But I don't need to see them or the way I did when I was young. But I do know that they do show up. Because much later in life, I became a mailman. Because I always joked that I was delivering paper messages by day and spirit messages by night, like a psychic superhero of sorts, I guess. Yeah. And I remember one time I went to this house, and this man who I didn't see come from nowhere, right, just appeared. And as I was going to deliver the mail, he walked up to me and he says, "I'll take the mail in for you." And I looked at him and I said, "You look a lot like my great-grandfather." And it kind of took me back a bit. And he goes, oh, he must be a really nice man. And he was. I said, he really was. He goes, I'll bring in the mail. So I gave him the mail, and I thought, and I turned around thinking in my head, I don't think this man lives here, right? And when I turned back around, he was gone.
But what happened to the mail?
That's what I thought. I said, did he deliver the mail? That's what I was looking to the little hole going, I hope he delivered the mail. Right. And, but I mean, nobody ever called to complain that they didn't receive their mail. So I'm assuming that it made it to where it needed to be. And I thought it was just a unique way of him to revisit me. But this way, I saw him not as a shadow, but as a person, as a solid person. I was, to me, I wasn't able to tell the difference if he was physical, non-physical, spirit, or what have you. He just looked like a real physical person. There was nowhere for this person to go. And there was like probably 7 stairs to go to the mailbox. And I even remember thinking I didn't even hear the mail slot move. And he just vanished. But I'm sure it was him. I'm sure it was my grandfather. How old were you? How old am I now?
No, then.
Oh, I was probably in my 40s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my 40s, like later in life.
Okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't mean that they stop visiting you.
So at what point did you decide to come out of the spiritual closet? Because, your culture is very similar to the Latino culture.
Yes.
It's the spirituality, psychic mediums, that kind of stuff is really in our DNA, very accepted.
Yeah.
So I imagine from what I think would happen to you is that when you did decide to come out as a spiritual medium or a psychic medium, it wasn't, you weren't ousted and alienated and ostracized by your community. They were like, oh, finally.
Yeah.
Well, is that the way it went? How did it go?
Kind of. I mean, throughout life, my mom was very Catholic, right? So I went to church, although it wasn't something that really spoke to me. And I just felt like I went through the motions of going through with my mom at a very early age. But I was always very connected. And having all these little strange things happen to me, like, the visitations, et cetera. So, when I was young, I had all these strange encounters where people would visit me, et cetera, and all these like things that would happen that kind of were waking me my whole life. But it wasn't until my 20s. In my early to mid 20s, things started to kind of shift a bit. And I had children, and I was a, very young father. Mm-hmm. And I remember going to where my ex-wife would work at a restaurant and just vibing people out for fun. And I did that quite often, but I just never really told anybody about what I vibed out. I would just go and vibe out, people for fun. As I'm sitting there waiting for her to get done work, right?
Sure.
And then I remember looking at one person and thinking, I bet you that guy's like cheating with that girl. I just have a feeling they're cheating. And then another person I'd look and say, okay, he feels like somebody couldn't be trusted with money. And then another person, I'd say, I feel like, nothing against people who use medical marijuana or whatever. Sure. At that time, I felt like he was probably a drug dealer. And not like in a mean way or a bad way or like horribly hurting people with like hardcore drugs or anything like that. But because in Canada now, we have legalized marijuana and things like that.
As a nation, we're a little bit behind. We have multiple states.
And I don't use drugs in any way myself, but I understand why some people may out in the world for different reasons for help them.
Absolutely,
right. It is medicine. It is a plant medicine as well.
Absolutely.
But and I then after my wife got done work, I would tell her about it, and she kind of ridiculed me a little bit.
Did she? She beat you up about it?
She did, because she said she thought you're a little judgmental, aren't you? And I'm like, I'm not being judgmental. It's just these thoughts that I had.
But did she understand about the psychic medium stuff yet?
She did. She knew I was always kind of very connected, very spiritual, and just out there in the world, like, I had a different perception. Mm-hmm. Part of who I am as an Indigenous person, ceremony and connecting to our ancestors and culture is something who we are. Mm-hmm. It's a part of who we are as in our being. And so anyway, she just made fun of me a little bit, and then we went home. And within a week, she come home, and she goes, "You're not going to guess what happened today." I'm like, I don't know what happened. She goes, "Well, I caught that couple kissing in the kitchen. The guy got fired for stealing money, and the guy come in and got busted by the cops for stealing drugs." And she said that happened in one day. She says, "How did you know that?" I said, "Well, I didn't really know. I mean, nobody really knows everything for sure. It's sense of things, right?" And that's all I brushed it off. It's just something that I had an extra perception of sorts like that. So she decided she was going to bring somebody to the house. Another waitress, her name was Jen Syme, a really nice lady. And we were going to have dinner, and after the dinner, I was going to read her. And I thought, well, I mean, I don't really know what I'm doing. I can't do this. She goes, "Oh, I'm sure you can. Just do what you did at the restaurant. Just tell her what you think or feel, etc. And I'm sure she'll be happy." And so she came over, we had dinner, and after dinner we sat down in the living room, and I started to vibe her out like I did, and I apologized to her saying, "I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm so sorry. I know you're probably have high expectations." And then I said, "I feel like you have a grandmom past," something very generic, right? Because I was nervous, very, very careful and nervous about saying anything. Mm-hmm. And she goes, "I do have a grandmom that has passed." And I thought, okay, well, that's pretty easy. And then I said, and then I heard the name Dale in my head. I said, "Who the hell is Dale?" She goes, "I just met Dale. Oh my God, we're dating." I'm like, "Really?" I was like,
you were surprised. Wow. Did I guess that?
I did. She goes, "Yeah, I just met Dale." And she said, I said, "Are you writing a book too?" She goes, "I'm working on a book actually right now." And I said, "I'm seeing something about you like moving around the world and pets." She goes, "We just talked about looking after people's homes and caring for their pets around the world." Like, are you shitting me?
Wow.
I was just kind of like shocked. Yeah. And again, in my head, I'm thinking this is like some type of I'm some type of mind reader of some sort.
Right,
because she's thinking about these things. It's, it's in her head and this is coming from her somehow. And I'm still almost a little bit analytical over it. And then she goes, "Well, I really came here to connect to somebody." I'm like, "Okay, you're not your grandmom?" She goes, "No, there's someone else. I was really hoping that you connect to someone else." Well, Jen, I'm not very good at this. This is new, and just try. Mm-hmm. She goes, "I think you're better than you know." So I just kind of sat there and I stared blankly like I normally do, and an image popped into my head, and it was of a young man, and he's wearing a baseball uniform and a number on his shirt. And he's bouncing a baseball up and down his hand. And I thought, what the hell is this, right? Like, where is this coming from? So I told her, and she goes, "That's who I want to talk to." And then I saw him walk into a shed, and that's all I saw. And then she started to cry. She goes, "That was my best friend growing up in high school. I've always wanted to make a connection to him. We played baseball, and one night after a game, he went home and he hung himself in the shed."
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to know if he was okay. I'm like, and I didn't know how to answer that. I feel he's okay, Jen. I feel he's okay. I feel like he's in a good space. Because I was so new, I didn't really know. So it gave me the encouragement to kind of open up more, to develop, to grow, and to start meditating more and start talking the spirit world more. And not just through ceremonies, through culture, but, doing this in a very intentional way. So I started to do that. And more things started to happen. It actually got a little weird, even weirder than my life already was. It was just things were aligning, just the right people at the right time, and different people were coming to see me now. I never like put out there that I wanted to do this. I never put out there that I thought that this is who I am. It was like Spirit had made the choice for me. Mm. But I decided to kind of open up to it to see what could grow or what could develop. And when that took place, it was like when you step into a space like that, of the uncertainty, Spirit will step in to help and guide you. And when you don't know, the spirit world is there helping you. They will show you that they are. And she went out and told 10 friends. And next I got people calling me all the time to come see me, and I'm like, what the hell just happened here?
Do I start charging for this? I can't keep doing this for free.
Exactly, yeah. So I did. I started charging a little small minimal fee of like doing sessions, and then I just got so busy. I was like booked for like 6 months, and then next thing I was booked for a year. I was like, I'm still working, trying to do all like balance out my life, and really it led me to an imbalance.
Of course.
Right, because I didn't know how to balance my life in a good way at that time.
And you were too scared to go in full time just yet?
I was. My mom, God love her, but she ingrained in me, Shawn, because you got a good job.
Yeah. Oh no, yeah. It's that baby boomer.
Yeah.
It's the baby boomers. You
have a job, you have benefits,
yeah.
You have a family. You have to keep these things. So I was working nonstop, pretty much.
I know.
And unfortunately, my marriage fell apart, and. I still have my 2 beautiful girls who I love very dearly, who live in Calgary, Alberta. But, it was a life learning lesson for me. And I really did embrace it. And even I did embrace it. I'm going to tell you, it wasn't like as clear cut as like, I am sure, like I was very confident this was all real. There was still a small smidge within me of doubt. And it was a fellow who showed up in my life. His name was Orion. I wrote about him in the book Spirit Talker. And we worked together. And he was a Muslim fellow from Bosnia. And I started to tell him about my, kind of spiritual growth and my understanding of connections to spirit and such. And he gave me a hard time. He's a guy. We played sports together. He really hassled me pretty good. And so anyway, it was this moment that shifted my life. Even though I was kind of embracing, I was still like doubtful. And I was just typing on my computer because I was doing like AutoCAD and bills of material at that time for like high-end office furniture for a company named Hayworth. And so I was working at the company and just sitting there, blankly staring at my screen. And I noticed when I get into these spaces, it's almost like a meditation of sorts.
The zone.
You zone. You get in the zone, right? As I get into the zone, I started to hear a voice in my head that I didn't invite, I didn't anticipate. It just kind of popped into my mind, and it just said a name. And it was repeating the name over and over and over again in my mind. And it was Charlie. I just said, Charlie. I'm like, okay, either I'm going schizophrenic, maybe there's some mental real problem with me, maybe I'm confusing this with something. And then I thought, okay, well, I'm going to go home. I'm not feeling well, I should go home. And I looked at Orion, and when I looked at Orion, it stopped. I'm like, okay. So I think, well, Orion must be doing something with Charlie on the weekend. They're buddies, because I don't know. I really don't know most of the time. Sometimes when these things are given to me, I just know they're coming to me. So I said, okay, Orion, I got a really weird question for you, but are you doing something with Charlie, or did you used to know a guy named Charlie? And he goes, I used to know a guy named Charlie. Why do you ask? He says, that's a really strange question to ask. I said, are you thinking about him? No. And then as soon as he said he knew him, it was like an image got impressed in my mind. It was a bar sign. And the bar sign was, it's a bar in Calgary, Alberta, called the Town and Country Bar. And it's just a T and C. The T and C, right? And it went, blink. Like, that's so strange. Why would I see the Town and Country Bar sign? He goes, that's the last place Charlie was seen alive. I'm like, really? I mean, you know something happened to Charlie, right? I didn't know what happened to Charlie yet. Then I start to see an image of this house, and there was a backside entrance to the house going down into a basement. There was a little thatched roof, and he was walking down. I saw about 4 or 5 shadows behind him, but I couldn't make out who they were. I felt some blunt force trauma to the back of my head, and he was going into the house, and that's all I saw. And I asked him, I said, did you know about this? And he said, no. He goes, how do you know this? I said, I don't know this, Orion. I really don't know. He goes, no, somebody told you this. Somebody put you up to this. It's not really cool. And he got really angry with me.
Yeah.
I freaked him out. I was freaking myself out, to be honest, because it's not something that I didn't know where it was coming from, really.
And you also didn't have the tool set or the experience on how to curb what was coming, because from what I understand with psychic mediums, information comes in, but it is up to you what comes out and when it comes out and to who it comes out.
Absolutely.
Because it could destroy a life.
It could.
Or it could...
Potentially. Like,
yeah.
When I find it, all the information that has been coming to me from all the years is to help people. It's never to hurt or harm anyone. It was always coming to me to kind of help, guide, heal.
But they also have to be prepared for, like, because
Yes.
we all got stuff we got to work on.
Yeah.
But if it's just thrown on us and we're not ready, it's jarring.
It is jarring.
Yeah.
And we had to kind of leave it because he got angry.
Oh, yeah.
So I stopped because he didn't understand. And he says, like, what are you trying to say? Are you saying I did something to him? And I'm like,
Right,
no, because I was in Bosnia when this happened. I said, I'm not accusing you, Orion. I'm not. So we let it go. And I forgot about it. He stopped hassling me, thankfully, which was kind of nice. And I picked up the Calgary Sun paper, as I did quite often in Calgary, because I'm from Canada. We were hockey fans, right? So
Sure.
checking out the hockey scores. And so anyway, I'm flipping through one of the Sun, looking for the latest hockey score of the Calgary Flames. Mm-hmm. And as I'm flipping through, there's a story of like almost a half-page story about a guy named Achari, who is nicknamed Charlie. And he was working at the airport, and where he was last seen was at the town of Country Bar, where he was found murdered in this home. They had a picture of the home with a thatched roof, the stairs. So I saw that, and I'm like, okay. So Orion comes in. I put the paper down in front of him. He said, I want you to read this. And he did. He goes, you remember that little conversation we had not too long ago about this? He goes, not really. I said, I know you do. Come on, please, just be honest with me. He goes, okay, I remember. He says, what do you want me to say? I said, I want you to tell me the truth. Did you know anything about this house? Because at that point, I was thinking that somehow I'm receiving this from people, right? And at that moment, I felt almost like it was a person telling me a story. And if he didn't know this part of the puzzle, then there's no way that it can come from him. It's not coming from him. It's coming to me from somewhere else. And
you didn't understand that the spirit world was talking to you at this point?
I did, but man, I'm going to tell you, I was stubborn. They literally had to beat me over the head with this stuff. And it's and the more I started to embrace,
right,
the more I started, and that was like, that moment was pivotal for me because I realized this was real. 100% real. This isn't something that I can make up. This is something that is coming to me from somewhere. And I'm going to tell you, it feels like it's coming from people. I remember when I was young and the experiences that I had, but maybe that's my imagination. I could brush things off, but I can't change this. This is like cold, hard facts of something that someone else didn't know. And I asked Orion, like, how did you know this guy? And he goes, well, I worked with him at the airport like 7 years ago. And I said, well, why would you be mad at me? How could I know? I didn't even know you worked at the airport 7 years ago, let alone knew a guy whose nickname was Charlie and his real name was Achari, for God's sakes. How am I supposed to put all that together? And he goes, I don't know. He says, Shawn, but he says, I needed to know that he was okay. And that's all he said. I said, let's just leave it at that. And it was at that time I realized that there's a conversation that happens like in full depth of how this works. Understood the language, let's say. It's like in a moment, even though I was playing with like learning a vocabulary, all of a sudden one day I became fluent. And I then knew, and I didn't have those words like clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairaudience, claircognizance. I didn't know what those words really meant.
Right.
I just knew that I could see things, feel things, hear things, and just know things. And it was like a combination of everything coming together that was being placed within my mind. It was amazing. It was amazing. And I decided from that point, in my like late 20s at that point, that I decided I was going to embrace this a lot more. And it like that moment like shifted my life.
So when you're going through all of this, how do you balance this all? I mean, I always like asking, do you see dead people? Are they walking around? Is there anyone right behind me now?
No.
I'm joking. but no,
I'm sure there's people with you, but I don't see them like that very often.
Yeah, so for you, because I know some people see them all the time. Some people never see them, only hear them. So it's all very, dependent on the person.
I think we're all dimensional beings.
Yeah.
Right? We live in one dimension now. Obviously, we're here, right? There's many other dimensions of space, time, and energy. And I feel like our spirit people, when we transfer from this physical form, our spirit, our light, continues on, right? And it continues on to where? And there's different levels of energy for which that can reside in. I mean, there's earthbound energy, and sometimes I've gone places and have seen what people would call ghosts. Like there's an earthbound spirit that they're there. And I've even gone out, like when I was really trying to understand the levels of energy of people, where we go and where we can reside, I started to delve into the paranormal, let's say, and go to places that were haunted, because I really wanted to understand, why is some people really loving and caring and compassionate? Why are some people angry, upset, and have this huge ego? They're still identifying as who they once were, not just the many lifetimes of who we've lived, not only within this world, but many other worlds. There's so much more to us than we can even comprehend than just this experience. But still some people cling to it. And I wanted to understand why, and why they have not moved into a different space or higher level energy or a higher source of energy or the other side, whatever word you want to call it. I don't think there's any wrong or right word for it. And many religions around the world have been trying to describe it in different ways forever.
And these are ghosts you're talking about, these earthbound spirits.
So I went out and started to kind of delve into that a lot, and I met many of them. I even recorded a bunch of them talking to me. So I know at this point, my life changed from the sense of, and I started to be able to record different spirits talking to me. I remember even doing a reading at home when I had people coming to me very early on. Because I started with tape cassettes, the internet wasn't around. There was nothing there. And I have to test my cassette tape, play and record. And I would always have to go testing 1, 2, 3, testing 1, 2, 3. So I did that, and I was waiting for somebody to come home. Nobody was in the house but myself. I smudged. I invited the spirits of the people to come, prior to them showing up. And when I went to play back the recording on my tape, I heard somebody go, "I'm right here."
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. Talk about the willies.
I mean, that's always fun.
Yeah. But it wasn't scary.
But it's still...
right.
I mean, I watched way too many horror movies in my
exactly. But it was really something tangible of a voice that was there that was not mine. Wow. And I realized it was a person, because when the person came, I was able to play the voice, and she identified with it as her father.
Oh, wow. So she recognized
the voice. And then, I actually gave her the cassette. I wish I would have kept that voice, because it was the first one I recorded. But over the years, during different sessions, I was able to record many different spirits that would show up and leave the imprint. Now, when I used to record earthbound spirits, they would still sound like who they once were. And I remember one place in particular in Nova Scotia because I ended up moving back home to Nova Scotia, Canada, where I currently reside. And I went to a place called Point Pleasant Park. And if you go to my YouTube channel, I actually have a recording of different voices on there of different spirits. But there's one of a pirate. And he still sounds like a freaking pirate. He goes, "I." He sounds like a pirate. And even though I was this man was coming around, he was kind of a little startling to me. But, he was still, and his name was Edward Jordan. And I was able to identify him, by speaking to him. And I actually recorded his voice. And then after the session, because people have brought me blindfolded wanting to see if I could tune into some spirits there, because this is where I was delving in, probably around 2009, 2010. That's when I was really delving into that really deeply. And so I did my research, and it turns out there was a pirate, Edward Jordan, and he did some bad things. And in Nova Scotia, because in Canada we have a very rich, deep, long history and culture that goes way back to the late 1700s. And he had a ship taken from him because he was a criminal. And then he somehow convinced him he should be a mate on the ship.
Oh, nice.
And then killed everyone except one guy who got away, and threw him out into the St. Lawrence River. And he survived, and he couldn't swim, but he was hanging onto a board. And he came ashore and said, "Well, listen, Edward, that was helping me on the ship. His once old ship, killed all these people, etc." So they actually were able to catch up to him, capture him, and in Point Pleasant Park, they hung him. They hung him there. But not only did they hang him there, they hung him and put him in a gibbet. Now, in Nova Scotia and Canada, went back in the day for pirates. Sometimes they would take people and they would hang you, but they also put you in a metal hanging cage with spikes.
Yeah.
And they would tar you and feather you and hang you there in the harbor.
Sure, as a deterrent.
As a deterrent for other people, right? So this is the person that I connected to.
Lovely.
Not a happy fellow.
I'm assuming he's...
See, here's that ego, right? That fear, that ego. And that's where people think negative things in relation to spirit. They're still just people.
So why don't they let go? What's the reason? It's just, since you've talked to so many of them at this point, I always wondered that. Like, okay, if there's a ghost who's been traumatized, or, you walk into... I remember when I went back to New York, to Manhattan, I went to the 9/11 memorial.
Right.
And I was raised early in my life, raised in New York. I was in the Twin Towers when I was younger, visiting like a tourist.
Right, of course, yeah.
So I remember like looking down and being in the Twin Tower and seeing the other tower. So I had a connection to the space. I still remember walking out of the subway, and as I stepped onto the sidewalk, the energy I felt was so heavy,
right.
so... Oof. It was like I had to kind of like really almost like protect myself from this heaviness that was there. I imagine that if you walked onto that area, there's probably a ton of angry people or a ton of angry ghosts or things like that. But you go to the place, in Auschwitz, you feel that, or Gettysburg, I heard is another one.
Right.
Why can't they leave? What's
they
the
can.
Reason? I know, but why don't they?
Well, it's their belief.
Their choice.
It's their choice. We have free will. We have free will now. We have free will in spirit. Nobody says you have to go through the big, bright, white light. Nobody's saying, okay, you got to go. You got to go now.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like after some time, that light may dissipate in some way. Could it ever come back for you?
Of course.
I believe it can.
Yeah.
I believe it can come back for everyone. I've actually, in my time, helped some spirits transition. And there's some that I haven't been able to help transition because I can't make them. But what I can do is, through ceremony and Indigenous culture, one of the things we do is smudge. So we can clear the space and put our prayers, our words, our ceremony into the smudge, and almost create a shield or a barrier of sorts, like in a space. Mm-hmm. So they don't like that. It's like garlic to vampires, let's say. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean it's hurting them. It just means they stay outside of that. So, and I've met many spirits like this, and I've tried to help all of them if I can. And there's been places I've been where people said they're spirits, and I've not seen or heard one of them. Mm-hmm. I can't. They may just avoid me too, because I even feel like that sometimes they know who I am,
and they don't want to deal with you.
No, I mean, if you knew there was somebody you didn't like, let's just say the Pope was coming to town. I'm not equating myself to the Pope, not in any way. But if somebody was coming to town and you were non-Catholic, would you go listen to him? Mm-hmm. No, you would just avoid them. You'd say, "I'm going shopping today. I'm going to Walmart."
That's really interesting about that, because so many people are. I mean, Hollywood has made ghosts, legendary in that sense of the fear and the poltergeists and that kind of stuff. But on a spiritual standpoint, I always wondered what happened to those souls and why they won't let go. And a lot of psychic mediums like yourself will go in and literally have a conversation with them where they don't even know that they're dead.
Yeah.
That they don't even know that they've passed. Like, it's just like they're just staying in this, and they're angry that, why are you in my house?
Right, you're in their space.
Did you ever see that movie, The Others?
Yes.
With Nicole Kidman?
Yeah.
What a brilliant film.
Absolutely amazing.
The ghosts thought that the live people were the ghosts because they didn't know that they were dead.
That's right.
Sorry, spoiler alert. It's been around for 25 years. Sorry.
Yeah.
But that idea was I thought it was so cool, and such a cool way of telling that story. But there are souls who have passed,
yes, sometimes
traumatically.
Right.
Sometimes they just have a lot of unfinished business, and they get caught up in the story of the personality, of the ego of this place. And a lot of times they don't even know that they actually have passed, right? Is that true?
That's true. Well, I think most of them know that they've passed.
Okay, most of them have.
But I feel like they don't believe they're dead because they're not. Because they're still alive in just different forms. So they don't identify as being dead, because they know that they're spirit. They walk through walls, they walk through things, they see people they can avoid, but they just avoid people. And I've been in places, and one of the places I've been, two of the places, I'll tell you about two stories that are just amazing to me, because I learned from these experiences too when I meet them. Because I don't walk in going, I'm psychic medium Shawn Leonard. the big ass.
The big P, actually. It would be the big PM. It would be a big PM on you.
Yeah. I don't walk around like announcing myself. But I remember I was like on an island in Nova Scotia called Tancook Island. Mm-hmm. And I walked out to the island, and I went into this little fishing shack that somebody's selling knickknacks.
Sure.
Right? Little souvenirs and stuff. There's very few people who live on the island. And it's a very cool space, by the way, because you don't need a license to drive there or anything like that. There's cars driving around with holes where your feet would go.
Nice.
Yeah, it's kind of
Fred Flintstone.
Yeah. But it's been around forever, and there's been a lot of people living there. So I walk into this fishing shack, and I hear somebody go, "Oh my God, he's gonna know all my secrets!" And I heard him walk out the door. Like, did you guys hear that? And there's only me, my wife, and somebody else working there who are friends. I said, "You guys just hear that man walk out of here?" They're like, "No." I said, "A man just walked out of here," and I described his voice. And she goes, "That sounds like so-and-so from up the hill." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Yeah, he lived up the hill and he killed himself and his children in that house up there."
Oh, jeez.
I didn't hear any children, mind you.
Right.
But I heard him.
And he was so traumatized.
Like he traumatized himself, I'm sure. I mean, I feel like he had mental illness.
Sure.
Right? And probably very severe mental illness. So, I mean, nobody does anything that normally to their family or hurts anybody.
No, there's
like
something
that.
off.
There's something not functioning right there, right? So he's done something horrible. Could I help him? Maybe if he allowed me to, but he'd have to actually listen to me. You know, it's like a psychologist or a therapist or, you know, we're still people. Mm-hmm. You know, if you want help, sometimes you have to go talk to somebody to maybe get some help. And maybe they don't know how, or maybe there's this fear that you know, potentially because of belief systems. Maybe they believe, well, now I know death is real and that I can exist. There's a light. Maybe if I go, I'll go to hell. Right. Maybe there is no real hell. Maybe you're in it and you're keeping yourself there. And so I've been there a few times, and other people have sensed and felt them out there, unfortunately. But another property that I went, which is kind of neat, because I don't go around thinking I'm going to be hearing spirits. But I went to another property, and I was just there for September fire outside, out in the middle of nowhere, Musquodoboit, and it's nice. And Janet Maxwell McDonald is the lady's property that I was on. And so I went out there, and we were having a fire, and I'm just admiring the stars, the beauty of the night, and, you know, I'm just in awe, right? And I'm in that space, and then I hear this lady come up to me and go, "I don't like you on my property." I'm like, pardon? And it was quite loud in my ear, right? And I didn't see her, but I heard her. And I said, "There's a lady on your land." She goes, "Oh, that's so-and-so. She's the old owner, and we feel her around every now and then." I'm like, that sounds all light and fluffy to you, but this lady doesn't sound so nice to me. She doesn't like me. And then I said, she's going to come back and talk to me. I know it. So I took my ex-wife's phone, and I said, I'm going to record, because I know when she does come back to talk to me, because this is the really cool part. Because when I do get an earthbound spirit that comes to talk to me, even though I'm with other people won't hear them.
But you can.
I can hear them.
And the machine can.
And the recorder can pick them up and record them. Wow. It's mind-boggling to me. How is it that I can hear them? I always kind of joke that I'm getting older and I got a lot more hair in my ear.
Fair enough.
But, you know, for some reason I'm able to hear it and other people aren't. But if I hit record on like a digital recorder on my phone or what have you and just sit there, then sometimes I can actually hear them talking to me. And if I hear them, I can stop, rewind, and you can hear them too. So that's what I did. I waited. And probably about 15 minutes went by, and they just got chit-chatting again. And she came back. She goes, "Tell that woman's son to stop hunting on my property." I said, "Got her." Rewind it, played it back. They could hear her. And so anyway, she's still out there. And her son does hunt the property. He lives just down the road. And he's got a little hunting camp back in the woods too. And about a year ago, she called me and said he was back at that hunting camp. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, somebody came and started banging on the windows and doors. And he got out there with his gun, and there's nobody around. And he won't stay back there now, she says.
It's pretty fascinating, the idea of earthbound spirits, because it's something that so many people are afraid of because of Hollywood and everything like that. But if you look at them as just people who are in trouble or are confused or lost, that's where it goes. From my understanding, that when you walk into a space like that, depending on who you are and the kind of light or energy that you're putting out there, that could repel, very much like what happens to you. Sometimes they're like, "Oh, hell no, I got to get out of here. This guy's going to, I don't want to deal with that trauma right now. I don't want to talk to him."
Absolutely.
They can't really affect you. And they can't really hurt you.
No.
But like if any of these these souls are on the wall here, these ascended masters, would walk into a space like that, they would scour. Like if there's anything, they would just leave.
Right.
Because the light would be so powerful, the energy, the vibration, the frequency is so powerful, they wouldn't even want to be around them. Is that fair?
True.
Is that fair statement?
That's true. Because if you approach them, I mean, I always approach all people with kindness, compassion, love. I don't approach even spirits, no matter what level of energy they're in. And most, let's say 99% of the spirits I connect to communicate to me are from a high level energy. But it's that 1%, that every now and then I run into that are still lingering around wherever they are in their own energy field and space. Well, I like to say that it's the astral world. In the astral world, they're in that space. It's still very much connected to the earth. They're kind of in between spaces. I don't want to say it's purgatory and somebody's keeping you there. That's religious belief systems, which I don't subscribe to per se. But there is levels of energy, and I would help them if they'd be willing to listen. And in Indigenous culture, we have ceremonies like where we light sacred fires and we make medicine offerings. We put our tobacco into the fire and say our prayers. And I think that shifts the energy from which they are in if they would choose to be part of that. And I do feel like, no matter what religion is out there, I feel like there is some type of ceremony in relation to the loss of when somebody makes their they transition from physical to spirit, right? And I feel like that does help many spirits move on to a higher space. They're surrounded by unconditional love of the people that they were family with. There's an energy there.
Shawn, let me ask you, this isn't, I've always wanted to have this question answered, and you might be the person to answer it. Ceremonies in general.
Yes.
What gives them the power or I guess the word is power. What gives a ceremony its power? Is it the sage that's actually burning?
No.
Is it the intention of the person doing it and the frequency of that person or if it's a group of people that creates this barrier? It sounds to me it's more energy of the human beings
It is.
doing that as opposed to the sage.
Yeah. I mean, I like to say, you see those old movies where somebody's walking to a space and, there's haunted and you get the priest and he's like swearing at the spirit, pretty much saying, the power of Christ condemns you. And nobody goes anywhere, right? It's the energy that you give it. It's the energy of the person that you operate from. Because if, when you approach something with fear, in Indigenous culture, one of the things we do is we smudge. It's a big part of.
So when you say smudge, what is smudging?
Well, smudge is like a ceremony where we use like sage, sweetgrass, tobacco, cedar. Sometimes we'll use other sacred medicines for that, but we put it in a smudge bowl. We cleanse our hands, so we cleanse our aura, let's say, our spirit. But we say good things. Creator, help me to know good things in life. Creator, help me to see good things in life. Help me to hear good things, speak good things, feel good things. Creator, cleanse my aura so that I'm in a good space of life, so they can approach people in a good way. So it's very simple, right? It's just words. But when I say that, I'm coming from my heart, right? That's why I wear this medallion today. My Indigenous name is White Eagle Spirit Talker, Wabak Gipu Agurumajik Jigmahamajik, which is a heart medicine the eagle carries. That's why there's a heart on the eagle.
Yeah.
So when you approach spirit and you approach ceremony and you do things, you should always come from an unconditional loving space. The sage, if I was to walk in, and I hear a lot of people say, hey, there's something in my home, I've used some sage, it's not working. Well, what did you do when you do it? You're going to like waving it around like scared out of your mind, or did you approach it and say, I know that you're here and I send you unconditional love, and may that love guide you home into the space and place where you need to go. It's the words. And you could say that in Mikmaq, you could say that in Indigenous language, you could say that in English. It doesn't matter what language you speak. It's the words, the vibration, the sound, the intention, the heart, and all. That's what brought everything into creation in the universe.
What's the voice? Yeah.
In the beginning, there was, the voice, right? And it let there be light. So did it say that with fear? Or did it say with certainty and unconditional love and a knowingness of what it's creating? And we're all creators. We're all come from the same source. No matter who we are. It's how we approach life and the people, our brothers and sisters that walk upon earth, whether you're Indigenous or non-Indigenous or, whatever culture you are. We still have to approach all people in a good way.
I wanted to ask you, the word Indigenous is thrown around a lot in today's world.
Yes.
Native. It's another one that gets thrown around. For people who don't understand what that means, I understand the definition, which is people of the land. Yeah. People that were the oldest people who ever lived on a land. Is that
kind of?
So
I'd say First Peoples.
First Peoples, yeah. Okay, First Nation, First people, yeah. So like the Aborigine are the first of the first people of that, and we have multiple tribes here in North America that are original people. That goes back. I mean, we're talking if we're talking about indigenous, I mean, we're going back 10,000, 20,000 years. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not like you just showed up.
No.
So these are original people, original at least bloodlines.
Right.
Of original people who actually walked the earth before, I mean, so who are the indigenous of Europe?
The indigenous people of Europe. That's a teaching I have.
Yeah, so tell me.
Because we're all indigenous from one place of the world or another.
Right.
We all are.
Of course.
We're indigenous people. Now, I represent the indigenous people of North America, Turtle Island, because that's where my ancestors have come from. And there's different, let's say, way, way, way back, there was different tribes of people, different races of people that lived upon Mother Earth, right?
Sure.
You know, and, I'm just one part of them, and I'm representing that aspect of culture from that space as First Peoples of Turtle Island. But there's First Peoples from all over the world. And that's why when people come to me thinking that they can't perform certain ceremonies in a certain way, like saying, well, I can't smudge. Why can't you?
Yeah.
You're telling me that the people of Europe didn't use frankincense and myrrh, or down the incense of India, in different spaces. There's different
Africa,
medicines, and there's different medicines that may speak to your culture more, but it doesn't change the ceremony. The ceremony is the same. It's how you approach it. It's the love, the kindness, the compassion you have in your heart that you put into your smudge. The words that you say that come from deep within you, and that connection to Source and Creator is what gives everything power.
So another question I've talked about on the show before, but I think you'll have a very unique perspective on, is ancestral karma.
Yes.
Is something that was introduced to me probably within the year, and I had never heard of it before. But it's something that in many readings I've gotten from my guests or friends of mine who do this kind of work, they would talk to me about ancestral like things in your family's line that you are holding on to. So things that your ancestors dealt with. So let's say alcoholism is a thing that your ancestors dealt with, and it just follows. It follows the generations until somebody says enough and breaks that and like heals that and so on. Can you talk a little bit about ancestral karma from your point of view?
Right. There's generational trauma, depending on the generations that have been affected. And in indigenous culture, we always look back our 7 generations before us, but also what we do today affects the 7 generations that are moving after us. So we always have that perspective in mind that we go back talking to our ancestors 7 generations. Now, when I meet people, and I've done sessions for many people, often I'll see that there's not only generational trauma, but also ancestral trauma that has, been passed down through genetics, within us, because I feel there's an aspect of who we are that is planned. Like, I feel like we create our life. We do. We co-create our life. But I'll tell you about a dream first to give you a sense, because that's how, as an indigenous person, I teach many times. Is I had a dream a long time ago. I was on the other side, the spirit world. And I was in this room, and I was surrounded by a bunch of people wearing long white robes. And I thought, okay, how strange for me to be in this space. And I was on, there was like rows, maybe about 5 rows, and there wasn't very many people there. There was one man standing in the front, and he was teaching. And he looked at me, he goes, "Are you supposed to be here?" I don't know where the hell I am. I said, I don't know if I'm supposed to be here or not. The guy beside me, who I can't quite make out, starts talking to him and says, "Sounds like Charlie Brown's teacher." Wah, 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 wah. And he goes, "Yeah, apparently you're supposed to be here." I'm like, I guess, whatever he said. I'm like, and he goes, I'm going to talk today about DNA in the human genetics, and how, each person living upon the world has a plan for life. And, your genetics written in the code of your DNA, you'll have your eye color, your skin color, you'll have all this. You're predisposed to a heart condition, because of your genetics. It's written in your code of your DNA itself. But he says there's all this stuff they call junk DNA.
Yeah, right.
right? It's not really junk. It's just we don't know how to understand it, or it doesn't make sense to us. But there's a code in there about your option lines, your lessons, everything that you're going to face in life is written in there. We don't know how to read it yet. And I was like, wow, okay. So he takes me outside and he touches something like a plant. And he says, you might not know this, but even this plant has a purpose. And it was one plant in a rock quarry. And he had a little device like a cell phone, and he showed it to me. And it showed me that its parents were this, it was learning this, it would live this long, and would go through this things through life. And this was his goal and his purpose for being here. I'm like, you're telling me this plant has a purpose and has a reason for being here. And he goes, everything does. There's nothing that doesn't have a purpose. And then I woke up. Wow. And so I meet people, especially because I have a TV show in Canada called Spirit Talk. And the show, I go to different Indigenous communities and I meet many Indigenous elders. I learn about traditional teachings and culture aspects with each. And in Indigenous culture, we have a reciprocal type of approach to things where you give something to get something. So I would give sessions to people in the communities I would go to, and in turn, I would get to meet elders and learn from the knowledge from different elders.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
Right. But in doing this, I've done season 5. Season 5 comes out in Canada and in May on APTN. But I would meet people that things would have happened to not only them, but to their grandmom, to their great-grandmom. And it could be, you call it generational trauma, could be an alcoholism that they're predisposed to. It could be abuse, physical, sexual, mental, that they would be facing. And so even though their ancestors, their mom, their father, other people had faced these things, they were facing it too.
Because those ancestors couldn't.
They didn't break the cycle.
They didn't heal it.
They didn't heal it. Right. They didn't move through it. They didn't move beyond it. So I would empower people, because with the way I approach sessions, I connected people in the spirit world. But if spirit often takes me to places where you struggle, where you're hurting, where you suffer, where you're stuck in life in some way. It's not to, pick a sore spot just for the sake of being right. Because this is where you need to heal. This is where you need to move through. This is what you need to get better from.
One thing I've heard, and I'm going to ask you a question about this with Indigenous people. When an ascended master finally finds enlightenment in this lifetime, and in their lifetime, that generationally, it ripples.
Yeah.
7 generations forward. It literally said that.
It can change the past.
It ripples 7 generations forward and 7 generations ahead of all the souls that are attached to their line generationally, gets cleaned out. All the traumas, it's like a gift that soul gives their whole line. Their lineage, because they finally got to the ultimate healing, the ultimate understanding of we are the truth, the Neo, that kind of thing, the Buddha. Buddha consciousness, Christ consciousness, and it ripples. Is that something that you've heard that happens?
Ascended master consciousness of sorts. Yes. Yeah. I feel there's maybe some truth to that, and maybe some, because I feel like we all have a purpose. Like you can help change the future generations by the way you approach life, and if they're your offspring or your people that are coming after you, they will actually. What I do in my life will help my children.
Yes.
Right. It will help my children because they will learn from my experience, but because our genetics are connected, and there's science to this too. I can't find the right word for it right offhand, but there's science. But it's
epigenetics.
Where things are connected, even though they're non-connected.
That's quantum physics.
It is quantum physics.
Yeah, it's I forgot the name of it.
Spooky action at a distance type of thing.
Yeah. Like if you affect a cell here and it's 5,000 miles away, it moves the same way because it's connected. Because we're all connected by the quantum field.
So there is science to this, right?
Yeah.
There absolutely is science to this. I'm more in the spirit aspect, but I love science and the relation.
Quantum physics.
I almost feel like all that stuff's catching up till today.
Yes,
like
it is.
A bit in how we've been thinking for like thousands of years, right?
Correct.
What I do will affect, the people in my life who I'm generationally connected to, because we're all connected. Some of my genetics, some of my genes, my cells are connected to some of the cells of my mother, connected to my children, to my uncles, to people, my ancestors. So the work I'm doing can actually shift and change, the future generations moving forward of my family.
Is there any stories of indigenous people or indigenous souls throughout history? And I guess that's really weird because there's so many different tribes, but that found enlightenment, a Buddha of indigenous or a Christ of indigenous. There's like this legend of a soul that found the elder of the elders.
Yeah, I would say in indigenous culture, there was, my name is White Eagle Spirit Talker, but I have heard of other elders in the past. There's many, but I do know of one that other people may know of called White Eagle, who was, a chief way back in the day, that he was a person who reached enlightenment of sorts. And, I think in the Ascended Master consciousness of people who are out there talking about Ascended Masters, they do often speak about an indigenous person named White Eagle.
Interesting.
So I feel like in cross-culture, not just indigenous people talking about this person, there's other cultures that recognize them. And I even know there was a medium from Europe named Grace Cook, who founded the White Eagle thing. And it's because she had a spirit guide named White Eagle, who was an indigenous person that, crossed many, lifetimes and had achieved like this kind of knowing or ascended master consciousness. So I feel like they, and whether our ancestors, because they're all our ancestors, we're all connected, right? There's no, us and them. There's just all us. That I feel like that energy of that person who come into life in the past is still very connected to many people today. And I think White Eagle would be the person that I would say probably best represents that today.
And there's probably many others as well, but that's one that popped off.
Yes, for me. That's the one I would know offhand, yeah.
Yeah, because there's thousands of them.
There is.
There's thousands of them throughout history.
If I was to say there was another one, he was even an actor, is Chief Dan George, very wise spiritual man who ended up on TV and films and different stuff, and he'd always appear as the wise elder fellow, but very prophetic. Actually filming season 5 of Spirit Talker, I went out BC to British Columbia, Canada, and I made a connection to him for one of his family members. I would say he was pretty ascended to me.
You feel the energy of the souls that come through you.
Yes, absolutely. You feel them. We all feel them. When you think about connect to certain people you speak to or connect to, you can sense who they are in the bigger picture than just the ego of one life that they lived.
Oh, yeah.
So I would say,
because of all the channels I've had on the show and, Sarah and those kind of people who come in and, I've had Buddha come through, I've had Jesus come through, I've had Babaji, Yogananda, these kind of souls. The energy you feel in the room, you just feel it. And that's from this point of view.
Right.
I can only imagine from your point of view of like when something comes in, you're like, oh, this has a different flavor to it.
Right. I can't say I've heard from too many Ascended Masters, but I would say I've heard from Yahshua or Jesus once. Probably the most profound person I've ever heard.
Oh, Yeshua?
Yeah, because I heard his voice.
Yeah.
And I was going through a tough time in my life. I was going through a divorce, and me and my kids were having some issues, and it was tough. I'm a human still. I'm going through the human condition, right? Sure. Sometimes you have to go through tough things and learn to grow and beyond that. But he spoke to me, and I was laying in bed and I was sleeping, and I heard somebody call my name, Shun. And I thought I was a little crazy for a minute. It's like, I'm sure I heard somebody just call my name. Shun. I'm like, yeah? Shun, you do not have a bad family. You have a good family. All he said. And I thought about it, and I cried. It was so impactful. One sentence of wisdom that he had given me was so profound, I'll never forget it. And it was just the kindness, the compassion, the love, the peace that I felt in that word was so intense. I understand why people would follow that man.
Oh.
If I was in 2,000 years ago and I was walking down the street and I saw that man speak, I would have probably dropped all my shit and followed the guy too. So, I think, the ideology and the religious, stuff around him. I think he's probably like the farthest from maybe what we made him out to be in some sense. But
well, like Yogananda said, Jesus Christ was crucified on the cross, but his teachings have been crucified for the last 2,000 years.
there you go.
And it's one of the most beautiful quotes because it's true. I mean,
Right.
We were talking about it earlier. It's like no one ever leaves Christianity because of Christ
You're
or his teachings.
You're right.
It's all the other crap that was piled on after he left.
But I feel inspired by that man in my own life. And he was an indigenous person of,
Of his
Jewish descent. He was still indigenous of his culture and a teacher. There's many ascended masters I think that we could align with if we chose. But between White Eagle and Joshua, those are probably two that I felt I've heard in my life.
So we've kind of mentioned, you were mentioning about the DNA, that things were written in our DNA as far as what we're going to deal with in this life, or challenges or benefits or things like that. And I've always thought this myself, is that, this is it's absolutely perfect vehicle for your journey in life, whether it be sickly, whether it be super strong, whether it be gorgeous beyond all recognition, or ugly in the terms of people, the way they look at you,
Right.
Deformed or whatever it is. It is a perfect vehicle for what you're supposed to do in this life.
Absolutely.
There's people. So if you're born with an amazing beauty, and I'm sure you've met these people.
Oh, of course.
These people when you and I
My
worked
wife.
my wife as well. They are to us. But when you, like, I worked in Hollywood, so I met a lot of big movie stars and celebrities and stuff. And when you see them in person, there's something, I'm like, oh Jesus, they're stunning, like men, women, like there's just something about them on a physical standpoint that you can't even explain. Then many times they open their mouth, but on just on a physical standpoint, the stunning, the beauty of it. Without those genetics, they don't experience the life that they do. A Tom Cruise or a Brad Pitt has an experience that you and I in this lifetime will never understand.
Right.
We will never understand.
And that's okay.
And that's fine. That's fine. And you will also see the beauty of someone who has autism. And he's teaching his family. He's teaching everyone he touches, because they're generally happy. They're generally the happiest and the most loving and so pure. And they are going through their journey and affecting people. So everyone's got a different path. It doesn't have to, one's better than the other.
No, of course not. No.
But without the genetics, they don't have the life that they have.
Right.
Without the genetics, they don't have the life. If you're not born, to a certain parent, to a certain thing, I was born, one of my parents was very creative. Hence, that kind of spilled off on me.
Right.
And I've taken it to another place from where they took it.
Right.
And I hope my kids do bigger and better things with whatever I give them. But without that genetic, that story inside of you, you don't have the life. So this is a long question. So I'll get to it now. My question is the soul blueprint or the soul contract. From your point of view, how do you perceive those, and what's your understanding of the soul blueprint or the soul contract?
Well, I think we obviously have lived many lifetimes, and not just upon this world itself.
Is that something indigenous as far as like the many lifetime idea?
Yes,
because the West and the Europeans were it's the one.
We have teachings in indigenous culture. We call it, when we look at the Milky Way. And like I have an oracle card deck called Wisdom of the Elders. And there's an art piece in there that is done by Tracy Metallic, who is an indigenous artist. And you'll see it where there's a couple of people pointing up at the Milky Way. And we call it the Spirit Road. Because when we look up at the Milky Way, when we feel our light, because those light, we're star people. We're made from the stars. We're like, literally, we're made from the stars. That one day, in all the stars out in the universe, because we're all connected, right? We could choose another lifetime within this world, or we could choose another lifetime in one of the other many worlds that are out in the universe, especially within the Milky Way. That's why we see it as a spirit road, because our spirits have to make a choice when we transcend, or from this form to our other form. Eventually, like we didn't start here either. We're not from Earth. I mean, if you look back at human evolution, Like how many hundreds of thousands of years ago? Let's go back 250,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
How many people were walking around the earth?
Mm-hmm.
What, maybe 100?
Probably, yeah.
Maybe a few thousand?
Maybe a few thousand. And also, that's Homo sapien.
Yes.
That's not Neanderthal. That's
Right.
not the other our cousins.
Right, our relatives,
Our
ancestors.
relatives, our different relatives that were offspring.
How many people are living upon the world now?
Oh, God, billions.
Right. Where did we come from? Did we originate here?
Mm-hmm. No.
No, we didn't. We didn't originate here. We've originated from other stars prior to this lifetime. And I don't know how many lifetimes we've lived. I just don't know, but I'm sure it's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I know of some that I've lived in this world, but I also have a memory of when I came here, like about 20-some thousand years ago, which my life's a little weird. I know things that I shouldn't know that maybe other people do. I'm sure there is people out in the world that know things like that for themselves, but I've known when I've shown up here. Does it mean that I was not connected to my ancestors? Maybe we all came at once. Who knows? Maybe we travel as soul tribes.
Well, do you believe though that, let's say you're obviously an indigenous person in this life, in another life you're another, you're black.
Well, we'll be indigenous from somewhere.
Yeah, you'll be African, or you'll be
absolutely.
European, or you'll be somewhere else.
Doesn't mean you have to be like indigenous, like from North America.
Exactly, you're North American indigenous.
No,
the last 500 lifetimes.
No, I lived a lifetime in Egypt.
Okay.
I remember a lifetime way back when I was regressed through regression hypnosis, where I was a sun god worshiper. I mean, hence my connection this lifetime to Grandfather Sun. I even have a teaching on Hay House called The Four Sacred Fires, which is about that first sacred light from which we're all created from, which is Grandfather Sun. And not just this sun, but all the suns. Because again, they're all connected, right? So what we do in this one affects the universe. Why do you think other star beings and other people are so interested in what we're doing here? Is because what we do here affects the whole. We're all connected.
In a way that we don't understand.
Way bigger than we understand. I'm hoping that one day we will. At some point, we'll start to more deeply understand it in a greater way, and I'm sure we will. We're headed that way. We're definitely headed that way. But, I've lived many lifetimes. One of them in France, where I remember once, the funny one that I remember that was regressed. I was a cleaning lady in England once. Hated that life. Don't think I ever showed up as a woman again either. Tough life, I'll tell you that. But, I remember one in Egypt where I was a sun god worshiper. I was one in southern France in the 1200s where I was just a peasant farmer fellow.
Sure.
I wasn't like anything like anybody important or anything like that, but it was a really cool experience from what I remember. And I actually even went to France to kind of explore that in like 2004, because I mean, even though I had the experience, and I'll tell you this like kind of very briefly, but way back when I was like stepping into my spirituality more in the year 2000, 2004 age, right? That I wanted to understand like other lifetimes. So I went to this guy, his name was Ian, and he did regression hypnosis and he did a group session. So I went to this group session with my ex-wife, and we went together, and there was maybe 30 people there. And during the regression, all he said through hypnosis was just go to a place you feel comfortable. It could be a field, it could be a forest, it could be an ocean, wherever it is, just allow yourself to go. Next thing you know, I'm in southern France in the 1200s. I got a like dirty old white shirt on. I'm a rake in my hand. There's a field. I look behind me. There's a castle up behind me. And anyway, I see this guy in the right of me in this little blacksmith shop, hammering away blacksmith stuff like horseshoes and, who knows. But, and I looked at him, and it was a weird thing that even though when I looked over there, I could feel he was my father, and my father from this lifetime. And he didn't look like how he did, in this life, but I knew it was him. I just knew him on a soul level. I could see it in his eyes that I knew him. And then I looked at the hill, and there was like another hill that was far away, probably a few miles, and there was like this switchback road that was coming down. And this lady on a white horse rode down this hill. And she was bareback and had long blonde hair past her bum, and she seemed somebody very clean and important, and I'm not. She rides up to me, and I'm like doing my thing in the field, and she starts like galloping around me in the field. I'm like, oh, great. I got some princess. And then I'm thinking, I must be making this up because this is ridiculous, right? That she's riding around on me and teasing me and laughing. And I'm like, if I look at her, somehow I'm going to end up dying. That's what I'm thinking in my head. And then the guy says, it's time to come back to this room. And I knew it was some type of Christian too, but I didn't feel Catholic. And I thought, is there even Christians in the 1200s that weren't Catholic?
Right. And hadn't spawned off yet.
Right. I was like, how does that even happen? Right. And so we get up, me and my wife, we go home, and she wants to talk about what she saw. I'm like, I'm not really, I think I made up everything. It was too strange. She goes, well, so we slept on it. We woke up, and she goes, I got to tell you what I saw. I've been thinking about it all night. She goes, she says, I was like in France in the 1200s. I was like a princess, and I was at this castle. And I think you were in my past life because you were like some dirty farmer boy in a field. And I rode up to you, I was riding around you, teasing you. And I'm like, she goes, what did you see? I said, I saw the same freaking thing. So I called everybody in the class to find out if they had like a similar experience, and nobody did. So I even went to France in 2004 to kind of explore this even further with her. And we found out about a group of Christians called the Cathars. And there were New Age thinking Christian people that were Gnostics.
Oh, the Gnostics, yes.
That were existing in southern France in the 1200s. Mm-hmm. And anyway, the Catholic Church declared a crusade against them,
of course,
and annihilated 200,000 people.
Yeah.
In the 1200s.
Yeah.
It called them all heretics because they were. I mean, to them they were heretics, right? But I know I was one of those people. And so I went to these castles because I knew I saw a castle, and they were called Cathar. So how many Cathar castles could exist in the 1200s? And there was a few. So I went to them all, hoping to find something. And I start walking around. None of them quite looked right. And on the second last day we were there, we went to this one castle called Puy-Vert. Excuse me. I get to Puy-Vert, and the castle doesn't look right, but I walk up, and there's one guy working there with a little kiosk, and he's selling books, little DVDs and such. And I tell him the story. He goes, I know who you're talking about. Because I'm actually a history major. This is my summer job. And he spoke pretty good English considering we're in France, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. He goes, there's a whole legend of a lady in white, a princess of Aragon of Spain. And the legend is because this was predominantly a farming community. He said the castle doesn't look the same because it's been rebuilt like 7 times since that time. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we even fixed it up like in the mid-1900s so that tourists could come. And he said, but there was a princess of Aragon of Spain who would come to this castle to hear the troubadours, the traveling musicians, the poets. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And she would come up from Aragon and hear them. But one year, this big field, he says, out here where we are, flooded. And the troubadours couldn't come. So she used to go down by this rock, by the river, by the water, and eventually she disappeared, and nobody knows what happened to her. She never came back. So there's a legend that she somehow lost her life or fell in the water, and the water subsided, and then all the troubadours came back. So she lost her life to bring back the troubadours. But she had long blonde hair. She rode a white horse. She had, white dress, and I'm like, this is amazing. So anyway, we get looking around, and I walk down to the field, and there's a clearing, and I could tell where there's old remnants of buildings. And he goes, this used to be a little village. I could see it like I was standing there. And I saw the hill that mm-hmm. she would have rode down, and there was still an old road. He goes, that's the old road from Spain there. And it was just like, it was surreal.
That's amazing.
And I knew I was there before. Mm-hmm. I knew I lived there before. It was awesome because, any doubt, because I always had doubt. Mm-hmm. I'm always one of those people that have to kind of know for sure. And so I explore. I want to go deeper. I want to research more. So I had to go there to find out, and I found out. And it was just amazing because then I know there's so much more to us than just this one lifetime that I'm living. We're divorced now, mind you. Yeah. Maybe we weren't meant to be together our whole life, and maybe not even in that one.
Right.
Right. But
different lessons.
Different things. Yeah. I'm obviously not a farmer in this life.
Right. So, Shawn, I wanted to ask you, we were talking earlier about this shift in humanity right now that's happening. Right. I'm sure you've felt it more than most in regards to the consciousness of humanity as a collective, how we are opening ourselves up to these conversations, this kind of stuff. This book, 30 years ago, sits in the back of an occult section somewhere, yeah, right? And it's not out there, and it's not as and these conversations aren't as accepted as they would have once been. Right. Would not have once been. So, is there anything in the from in the indigenous point of view, of kind of like a prediction of where we're going, and because I gotta believe that a lot of this stuff was kind of written in the stars, if you will, or spoken about, like there will be this time where humanity will shift, and we've seen it. We all seen it, even in our lifetime. Right. We've seen the shift in humanity, being more open to things, not only the technology and all that stuff, but just the spirituality seems to shift. Like when you and I were growing up, the Vatican was, it was perfect.
Yeah.
Nothing. It was just infallible, right? Not so much today.
Exactly.
Not so much. There's been a couple stories of things that happened. So things are shifting. I'd love to hear your point of view of where you think humanity is right now, where we're going in this next year and maybe in the next decade or so, or generally this broader paintbrush of it.
Well, I mean, when I was young, even though I was raised Catholic, right, indigenous people, I mean, we had, unfortunately, we lost who we were.
Right. A lot of it was lost. Yeah.
But I think everybody's lost who we are. And thanks to technology and the ascension of different spirits that have stepped into the world at this time, and that have laid the foundation, even some of the people that have come before us, like Wayne Dyer and some other great speakers and teachers and authors, etc. This is a progression. And I think because of technology, I mean, we wouldn't be here today.
Correct.
If we didn't have the technology. But because everything is being sped up in technology, our spirit has to kind of race to kind of get there as well, to balance, because there has to be balance. And because we're advancing so fast in one way, we have to advance really fast in another as well. So I think a lot of spirits like yourself and all the guests that you have on the show have been inspired to move into this area of life right now to help bring awareness and understanding greater than what we've had in the past. Because I mean, for so long, it was just woo, right? Now there's
New Age.
Right. And you have quantum physics that says, everything that, spirituality's been saying for a long, long time.
Right.
And then they even have quantum physics say things are even connected. If you would have said that before, it would have been New Age. But now it's science. Funny how that works, eh? So I think it's a time for us to kind of step in to move, because I mean the imbalance within the world, it's more prevalent now than it ever has been. I mean, other than World War I, World War II, I mean, we're literally on the cusp of like having another world war.
Oh yeah.
And if we don't shift and change our perspectives, and I think things are, we need to find balance. In some parts of the world, like, maybe Canada, United States, and Europe are moving into this, raised conscious and awareness, let's say. And maybe even in some parts of India and some other places. And I'm sure there's many places in the world that are like that. But, there's a lot of oppression. And one day, I think it'd be nice if the world wasn't oppressed in any way. And I think that instead of being separate nations, we become the human nation. And, we had teachings in Indigenous culture. We have the medicine wheel, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with. I'm not. Well, the medicine wheel is a circle, because we're all in a circle. But in the circle, there's different colors, right? You have in the east, which is yellow for the rising sun, but also even could represent the yellow, the Asian people of the world. And you go south and you have black, or you have the red people, the red earth people. So people who are indigenous are more connected to their culture in that way. You go west and you have, so we have, I forget. I'm going to start over if that's okay. Sure, go for it. Okay, because we have yellow, red, black, white. That's white. I forgot. I'm on the spot here. So, in Indigenous culture, we have the medicine wheel. So in the medicine wheel, it's a circle which represents all people of the world in the different directions, because there's the 4 directions of Mother Earth. But on the east, we have the color yellow, which represents, the rising sun and perhaps even the Asian people of the world. And then you have down south, which represents the red people, right? In the southern part of the world. But you also in the west, where the sun sets, the darkness, and the black, where the sun goes down the last. And also the black-skinned people of the world. And then we have white of the north, right, which represents the Caucasian people of the world. But you can't have a circle without all those colors in it. I mean, it's one circle. If you take out one, or you take out this or that, I mean, it's not whole or complete. So there's Mother Earth, there's oppression around the whole world, but we have to find a way to kind of like shift the consciousness of the world, not just of our own little space and place, whether it's just Canada, United States, what have you. But if we change and we show other parts of the world with technology now, which is amazing, because China is trying to, and nothing against Chinese people, it's just the oppression of government and such, right?
Correct.
That it's they're going to start watching YouTube and other things, and it's going to help them think different and broader. And, is that not going to have effect on their people in time? It will. Will they be always oppressed? No, they won't. And I think, the same with Iraq or Iran or other places that, maybe struggle with repression, right? Or Kuwait, and nothing against the people. I just feel like it's government structures that have been in control. And in the past, it's been religion and government. And now it's us, the people, that have power. And we have to remember that. We are the world. We are a human nation together on one circle, one hoop of life. And what we do to help change us and the people that we love, we care about, will ripple out into that globe that which we all live upon,
Is there anything in the oral traditions in Indigenous from your line, or that you have heard of, that is similar to like the Mayan calendar, which was the 2012 was a big deal? Is there anything like that? Not specifically a calendar or a date, but is there anything like this will be the time of this? This will be the time of this?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
But what I would say is that we're always taught to live in the moment.
Okay.
In the present, right? And it doesn't mean that what we do today, what you do affects the 7 generations. So our teachings all revolve around what we do today can help the future 7 generations beyond us, because we want to have a healthy, sustainable place and world for them to be upon. Do I feel like there's change coming within the world? I feel like it's like more rapid than ever before. And I also feel that there's big stuff coming for humanity. And
when you say stuff, what do you mean?
Well, it's hard. I don't want to get into too much. I don't want to scare people either, because with wars and things like that. Like I said, we're on the brink of nuclear war.
Yeah. And the thing is this, though, like nothing that you're saying here is shocking.
Yeah.
It's not. It's we could all see the tea leaves.
Yeah.
We could all see it. We could all see the economy. We could see food.
It's going to happen again.
Yeah. All these institutions something's going to happen.
If I was to give you a prediction, potentially, and I don't want to scare anybody out in the world, because that's not my intention for being here. It's to help enlighten people. I feel potentially we might be facing a couple other nuclear attacks in the future. Down the road.
Not world ending, but just enough.
No.
Just enough to scare the living hell out of everybody.
History repeats itself.
Yeah.
It does over and over until we learn the lesson, just like our karma within ourselves, right? There was 2 bombs that went off in the past. There'll probably be 2 again at some point. Where? I don't know.
Right.
But I don't think we're meant to know. I don't think it's like I can go and just stop somebody from doing this. It's not, if there's a plan for Earth, then there's a plan for Earth. That I feel like something like that's going to have to take place before we realize, hey, we can't do this to ourselves.
We need something to happen to just say enough's enough.
Yeah, we can't be warring.
But without the counter energy,
right?
You can't. Without the opposite, the polarity, the duality.
Yeah,
you can't learn.
No.
You need to have
negative things that you fight, you struggle or strife against.
You need Darth Vader.
Yeah, you do.
Without Darth Vader, Luke can't be Luke.
I don't know. I'm going to tell you things I've seen.
Sure.
Like I've connected to other beings in other worlds.
When you say other worlds, are you talking about physical universes?
Other worlds. No, other worlds.
Realms?
Other planets.
Other planets, got it.
Like other beings on another
Sure.
world. Like I've connected to 2 of them. One was scared to show me anything because they didn't want humanity to know where the hell they are at all.
Wow, they're terrified of humanity.
They were terrified of us because of what we can do, because now what we could do can affect them where they live.
Wow.
We could hurt them where they are without them maybe knowing that we were going to do it. So there's this fear from one of the nations that I connected to that, because humanity is scary. We have, that's why I feel like there's so many star beings and star people coming here right now. And they may be hopefully interjecting in some way to kind of help us in a small way. I think they're introducing themselves to us a little bit now. And I think it's going to become more apparent down the road, and we'll really know. I even feel like that they're going to make an announcement in the next few years that they know of another world where there's beings.
Or that they're here or something.
Well,
like
no,
that.
they know of another world. I think it's Proxima b that they've gotten a signal from. And not only, I feel like that James Webb has gotten a biochemical of life, and they have not announced it. Why? I mean, well, it's probably good, because there could be some person in some other world that's off balance that decides to drive a proverbial car bomb off because they're the devil. Do you know what I mean? That's how we've been thinking here for so long. That we have to shift our thinking, because if we're going to move further and grow deeper beyond this world itself and embrace other beings from other worlds, we have to find balance here first. Because the next evolution of humanity is beyond our world, and we're not ready for it.
No, not now.
We're not. We're not ready for it. We have to, through the work that all of us are doing to kind of help balance this out, is that when we do step out into this next realm in the next 7 generations, because I'm telling you, in the next 7 generations, we will be there. We will be going to other worlds.
It's just logical. Look what we've done in 100 years.
Right.
You know?
We'll be like, and I mean, what has humanity done in the past? Like, if you look at humanity and the history repeating itself, sailed ships from Europe to what they thought was a new world, or the people, and conquered them. Like, is that going to be the plan for the next world? Have we learned from what we've done, what has happened or occurred the first time? We need to learn from these things that have happened in the past, and if not, they will repeat. Just like I said, potentially there could be like 2 nukes that go off in the world down the road, because we didn't learn from the first one. Right.
I mean, those first 2 bombs that got dropped, they definitely rippled.
They did.
We still feel the ripples from
that.
I mean, they basically brought the rise of North America, of the United States, to be the dominant power in the world, which there's nowhere in history, nowhere is it written that that's going to stay forever.
Right. Like recently, in the last 4 months, I had another being connect to me who, I mean, and I'm going to tell you, I'm not really into the alien stuff as much.
Yeah.
But do I believe there's star people and star beings that connect to us? Yes.
Yeah.
But there was one guy who was blue. And I think he said he was a Lemurian connected to me. He didn't tell me his name. I saw his world. He took me there. I saw it. I saw how they live and how and I feel like they lived on other star systems more than just their one. And they even told me the history of what they went through and why they had to live in different worlds themselves because of, things that they faced in the past amongst their, different beings as well. But they're the world that I saw that they live in, if this is, where we're meant to go someday, because we're going to move out into the universe and live in different worlds within the Milky Way, like physically, then we need to learn how to live in harmony and balance. And not only that, but to love the world from which we live upon. And that's one teaching that Indigenous people have been trying to share for a long time.
Right.
Is like how, Mother Earth, caring for her, the animal nation, the plant nation, all the nations of Mother Earth herself, that we have to learn how to not take more than we need.
It seems like there's a lot of that going around right now. I saw a documentary the other day on Netflix about just people buying stuff constantly.
Yeah.
The amount of garbage that is being produced on a daily basis, the amount of plastic, the amount of just garbage, clothes. Things aren't being built to last forever. They're built to last for a season because they need more money and they want to keep building it. And they're not thinking about what's going to happen to the planet. They don't think about our food supply. They don't think about animal welfare. They don't think about our ecosystems. They don't think about any of that stuff because it's all about the dollar.
I think there's a Cherokee proverb that says, like, when we fished out the last fish out of the ocean and cut down the last tree, well, we realize that we can't eat money.
Well, it's Easter Island. It's exactly what happened at Easter Island.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a perfect example of a culture that literally killed all its animals that were on the planet, on that little world of theirs, the island, knocked down all the trees. They basically stopped. They destroyed all their natural resources. So it's a beautiful story about what will happen to us eventually. It's slow. The planet's fairly big.
It is, yeah.
For us, I mean, we still have a lot of people on that planet, but it's still fairly big. But it can't. We can't go continue this route.
No, it's
another
like
100 years.
Development. It's it's not sustainable for the growing population of
so something has to happen for this.
Well, we have to
change.
look at life differently. It does have to happen. We have to look at our perspective on Mother Earth. Like, if we were fearful of maybe not being able to, and I'm not saying this has to happen. I'm not putting it out there for somebody to make this happen or create, because that's not my intention.
Sure.
But I feel like we need to look at life and sustainability and really value what Mother Earth provides for us in relation to food, water, and resources, and care for Mother Earth in a much more greater and profound way. And I think from what I've seen in the world that I did get to visit with the person that had shown it to me, it was pristine. The waters were clean, the forests were rich, and a lot of the trees they had there were similar to what we have here. The world was bigger, and they had no roads. They had no need for roads. They could travel, without roads. Like, they had their ships to fly wherever they needed to go, etc. They were harnessing the sun in different ways. I got a glimpse
of what could be,
of what a future balanced civilization could look like. And we're not on that path. And I think if they've evolved to that space, which I know they have, we can too. But we have to shift and change, and we can't wait for our universal brothers and sisters to come down and scold us and spank our hand and say, "Listen, you're doing it all wrong." We have to figure it out, and it takes people, good people, inspired people, like you, like me, and other people that have come in to not only help us find out about what spirit is, but understand where we are and the value of that.
Have you ever seen the movie The Abyss?
The Abyss. I think I've seen it.
So
Is that underwater?
Yeah, the underwater one. Yeah, with Ed Harris and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio. It was written and directed by James Cameron.
Okay.
Avatar and Titanic and so on. In that movie, the director's cut. I'm a filmmaker, so I'm sorry. This is what I have to say. The director's cut, which was on Laserdisc. That's how old I am.
Oh yeah.
They in that movie, in that director's cut, which was cut by the studio. But James Cameron's original vision was that there were aliens underneath the water,
right,
and they were always watching us. In the director's cut, there's a moment where the oceans, literally giant tidal waves come, and they're coming towards every coast in the entire world. I mean, we're talking about tidal waves that you can't even understand how big they are.
Yeah.
And life-ending ones. And they're all coming without warning to every coast on the planet. And all of a sudden they just stop. And it just sits there. This is the wave.
Right.
And it was a message from these star beings who lived underwater. It's like, you're not the biggest boy on the block.
Yeah.
You guys got to behave yourselves.
Right.
We don't like, and they were saying to Ed Harris, like, the war, the famine, the explosions. It's like, it needs to stop. So it was really interesting. It's such a beautiful idea. And then the waves went back in. It was just a warning. It's like, guys, play nice. You need to learn.
Right.
If not, we're here. And at any moment, we could stop this.
Right.
Just like that. It's really fascinating to think about that idea now, because we're getting to that. We've been at that place.
We are, yeah.
And we can't keep going this way.
We can. So that's why we have to shift and change. That's why the world has to look at, not that we're warring against each other, fighting over like land, like Russia fighting in Ukraine over what? I don't know what are they fighting?
It's ego.
It's ego, but it's also
ego.
For, just because, Mother Russia would be greater, like, this is ridiculous. It is ego.
It's pure ego. When you look at space and you look at the earth, there are no lines.
No, there
are
isn't.
no lines of nation. They are imaginary lines that man has put together to separate ourselves.
Maybe one day that we will get there. Maybe, I hate to say this, like, to sound like a weird kind of conspiracy person. Maybe one world connection of like government of some sort would be good for all of us.
Oh yeah, well, right now, no, because right now there's way too much ego.
No.
But I think they're I think what the United Nations were supposed to be with this kind of.
The concept is good.
The concept is there. We're just not there consciously. It's like trying to. It's like Christ coming down 2,000 years ago and talking about the power of God is within you.
Yeah.
You know, everything I can do, you can do.
Right.
You know, be kind to, like, these ideas were so far beyond the normal person at that time because the level of consciousness was so different, so lower,
Yeah.
that they couldn't grab it. So that's where we are now, you know, but we are very fast.
Yeah. And again, like, what's good about technology is I feel like even for the last probably 100 years, we've been mentally brainwashed of sorts.
Absolutely.
With media in different ways.
Oh, yes.
Right? So now there's people, free-speaking people, that can speak out into the world where it's not controlled.
Right.
Right? So that's where this big shift is starting to change too. And
Yeah, shows like this.
right, absolutely, shows like this, right? So before it was the news, and there's like instilling fear and all this. So it's really kind of like, oh my God, like what should we do? And it's just, you know, now less and less people are watching the news. And in modern day, the way
and
it
movies
is.
in Hollywood,
right?
It shows in Hollywood.
It is, yeah. It's we're changing in that way where there's more of a platform of where we the people are connected, and we have our own voice, and you know, what we use that voice for has enormous amounts of power. Right. And so I you know, thank you.
Oh.
Thank you for doing what you do out in the world. I know you told me the story about your spirit guide guiding you with this, and I mean, it's definitely part of your path, your mission, and your purpose for life. And thank you for accepting that. Because we do have free will, and what we need is more people accepting their power of what they can do to help shift and change the world for a greater, better space.
It's about changing your programming. You know, you have programming, I have programming of those first 7 years of life that really in the operating system, our operating system is really built in that time. And I think, like I've said before, is like we spent the first 7 years being programmed and the rest of our life trying to deprogram ourselves to connect to different things. The fear I had when I was doing the show, when I launched it, was programming. I had to break through that and have faith. I'm sure you have done that many times in your life. Yeah. All of us do. But when the call comes, whatever that is, it doesn't have to be grandiose. When that call comes, you have to have the bravery, the courage to take the leap and understand that there will be someone there to catch you. There will be someone there to guide you and help you. I have to ask you this one last question, Shawn. We've been talking a lot about spirits and spirit guides.
Everything.
And the soul blueprint and other worlds and all this stuff. For someone listening to this who has watched this whole thing and goes, these guys are absolutely nuts. This is insane. What are they talking about? You know, this is woo-woo craziness. What message would you have for someone who is completely just like, because if someone has listened to this point of this conversation, they are conflicted because they are searching, but their program is telling them this is BS. Yeah. And I find a lot of that in our comments, people who will attack what we do, but like, why are you here? Like, there's things in the world that I don't agree with, but I don't go to there and attack them. I don't have the need for that. Whatever their belief is, their belief. That's the way I look at it. Wherever they are there. But I'd love to hear if there was a message for that person who says this is all a bunch of malarkey, if I'm going to use an old term. This is a bunch of BS, and it's not real, and how can this all be? What message would you have for that person?
I would say get out there and explore. Go out, and if you don't believe in ghosts, go to places where ghosts out and go start talking to them. Take a recorder and just talk to them and see if they talk back to you. Because the minute somebody does say something back to you, your whole life will change. Because then you'll know that everything you think is invisible and not real becomes real. And it'll shift and change your life in a way that you'll go deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. Because you want to know more, because you want to know about more who you are, how it all connects together. And it'll open up something inside of you that is fun, it's exciting, it's joyful, it's amazing. Any fear associated with it, put that all to the side. Let it all go. No matter what anybody tells you, especially when it comes to spirit, even with ghosts, even if they have egos, just approach them with kindness, goodness, love, respect. Get out there and explore. Read, learn, research things. delve deeper, not just listen, get out there and do it. When I wanted to understand things about spirits, I didn't just read a book.
Mm-hmm.
I went out there and said, I wonder if they're really real, if they're really there, and why are they there? Mm-hmm. I went out and explored, and then I learned a lot from that whole experience. If you're not sure if psychic ability is real, learn to become more psychic. Mm-hmm. Everybody, it's in us. It's innate within us. It's a natural part of progression and human evolution. Not even human evolution. It's within all of the animal nation and plant nation within the world. Mm-hmm. It's connected. It's already there. It's just us remembering and retapping into it. But work at it. Try. It's like people say and no offense to people who think the world is flat. Because they have their belief system, and that's their belief system, and it's okay. I never knock anybody's belief system, because then I'm as bad as anyone else for saying, that's crazy, that's wrong. I mean, that's your belief system. But maybe try floating a balloon up with a camera on it and see if you can see the curvature of the earth. Just give it a go and see what happens. Mm-hmm. Get one as big as you can and float it up there with a GoPro, or put a GPS tracker on it and see if you can find it after. Explore. Don't be fearful of exploring and trying to understand who we are in the big picture of Mother Earth herself, and within the spirit world and within the universe.
Beautifully said, sir. Beautifully said. Now I'm going to ask you a few questions I ask all my guests.
Sure.
What is your definition of living a fulfilled life?
Being whatever brings you joy. Just doing whatever brings you joy. Just living in the moment of joyfulness your whole life. Is the best way I can answer that. So whatever that is for you, then that's what you're here to express. Do it with your whole heart and do it with full of joy.
If you had a chance to go back in time and speak to little Shawn, what advice would you give him?
I'd say don't be scared. Don't be scared. There's nothing to be scared of.
How do you define God or source?
If I was to define God, I would say, what isn't God?
Right.
What isn't the Great Spirit, the Creator? What isn't that? Mm-hmm. There's nothing that God is not.
Beautifully said. What is love?
Same. The same. I don't think when we think about our lives on the other side, coming into this world and knowing the struggle and the hardships and the tough things that we're going to go through, whether it's the loss of a child, the loss of a parent or a spouse, or the mental illness that you might be taking on, you've done it for your own evolution of understanding and knowledge. Mm-hmm. You've chosen it, and you've done it from a place of unconditional love, because knowing no matter what you take on in this life, that that one day you'll step back out of all this experience and see it from an unconditional loving space.
And what is the ultimate purpose of life?
Whatever brings you joy.
Follow your bliss, as Joseph Campbell says.
That's right. Whatever is your joy, brings you joy in life. That's the ultimate purpose for each of us.
And where can people find out more about you, the amazing work you're doing, and pick up a copy of your book, Spirit Talker?
Well, you can find Spirit Talker on Amazon, Hay House. It's a published book by Hay House. I'm working on my second book now. I also have an oracle card deck called Wisdom of the Elders, also published by Hay House Publishing. You can find me on my website, Shawn, SHAWN, hyphen, middle line. If people don't know what hyphen is, Leonard, LEONARD.com. And if you sign up for my email list on my website, you'll get a free meditation, and I give 5 spiritual tips of developing your intuition and psychic abilities as well.
That's beautiful. Shawn, do you have any parting messages for the audience?
Thank you. Thank you for being present today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being who you are and showing up in this world and just being open enough to listen to this conversation. So thank you.
Shawn, I appreciate you and everything you're doing to awaken this planet, my friend. Thank you so much for being here. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, and thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue your journey, and don't forget to subscribe.